With everything going on right now in America, Colin Kaepernick is once again headline news. And rightfully so. He tried to open the eyes of the country 4 years ago to police brutality in the most peaceful way possible. And he was demonized for it. He was vilified. He was accused of disrespecting the military when he actually went to the military and asked them how he could bring awareness to the issue of police brutality against minorities in a respectful way. And the military actually recommended kneeling for the national anthem. But no one wants to talk about that. No one wants to mention that little fact when talking about Colin Kaepernick. More importantly, he was blackballed from the NFL. NFL owners got together in some type of collusion, and all 32 owners refused to give Colin Kaepernick another opportunity. Which to me is mind-boggling when you think about it. Check out this list of some of the quarterbacks who have started a game in the NFL, or in some cases, multiple games in the NFL, since Colin Kaepernick has been blackballed. Mike Glennon, Colt McCoy, Mark Butt Fumble Sanchez, Geno Smith, Brett Hundley, Case Keenum, Taylor Heineke, whatever the fuck. I watched damn near every game of the NFL season. I have no idea who the fuck he is. Josh Johnson, Blaine Gabbert, Sean Mannion, Nick Mullins, Kevin Hogan, perhaps the cousin of Hulk Hogan. He's in the wrong industry. Brock, Superbum Osweiler, TJ Yates, Tom Never Was a Savage. The list goes on and on. The list of bums who have started games since Colin Kaepernick was unfairly, in my opinion, blackballed is eye-opening, to say the least. I would start Colin Kaepernick over every single guy on that list. And we all know why Kaepernick was banned from the NFL. I guess I shouldn't say banned, because he was never officially suspended by Roger Goodell or kicked out of the league. But unofficially, we all know, he has been persona non grata in NFL circles for 4 years. To his credit, and I'm not a fan of defending Roger Goodell, but I will in this case, because Roger Goodell did try to get teams to give Colin Kaepernick a chance back in 2017 and 2018. And NFL owners just refused to do it. And I don't think it was a political thing. I don't think it was a racial thing either. I know it wasn't a racial thing. At the time, in 2017 and 2018, Colin Kaepernick, it seemed like on a daily basis, was being demonized by the mainstream media. And to be honest with you, by white America. An unnamed executive from one NFL team said a couple of years ago that if they had signed Colin Kaepernick, they would lose 20% of their season ticket holders. That is a shitload of money. Simply put, Colin Kaepernick was bad for business, and there was nothing that Roger Goodell and the NFL could do about it. Last December, the likelihood of Kaepernick ever playing another down in the NFL, it just seemed to dissipate. Remember he had that tryout in Atlanta? There was all kinds of bullshit going on with it. NFL wanted to hold it at one facility. Colin Kaepernick decided at the last minute that he wanted to hold his tryout at another facility across town. To be honest, it wasn't a good look for Colin Kaepernick. I mean, if you were really serious about getting back into the NFL, you'd figure that he would be willing to work with the league, especially on a tryout. Does it really matter which field your tryout is held on? No. By changing facilities at the last minute, it caused most of the teams that were interested in possibly signing him to miss out on the tryout altogether. It ended up coming off as a publicity stunt by Colin Kaepernick. And I don't think he intended it that way, but that's the way it was perceived publicly. It also sent another message. Colin Kaepernick was only interested in getting back into the NFL on his terms. You don't have to be a genius to figure out that that wasn't going to work. This is not the NBA, where the players have most of the control. This is the fucking NFL. The closest thing to a communist-style hierarchy that we have in this country. Roger Goodell and the league owners are running the show, not the players, and damn sure not Colin Kaepernick. With the events going on around the country right now, and Colin Kaepernick pretty much being the face of police brutality awareness, there will never be a more perfect time for a reunion between Colin Kaepernick and the NFL. For one, I think the American public is finally awake to the fact that Colin Kaepernick was right. Whether or not that they agree on how he brought the issue to the forefront, there's no disputing the fact that the issue of police brutality that he was trying to shed light on was a real issue, and he was right about it. I don't think Kaepernick would cause a rush of refunds today on season tickets like he would have 2 or 3 years ago. Another reason I say it's the perfect time for a reunion is because I don't think there will ever be another time where the NFL will be more willing to accommodate Colin Kaepernick and his antics. This is the perfect time to do it. Training camp begins next month. This is the perfect opportunity for him to make a roster and have a full training camp and a preseason. Now, whether or not he'll make the final 53-man roster is anyone's guess. I mean, he's been out of the fucking league for 4 years. It's not like riding a bike where you can get back on and everything comes back to you. I mean, this is professional football at the highest level. Getting back into game shape is hard enough, but once the regular season begins, the speed of the game ramps up. It's extremely difficult to get back to being the player that Colin Kaepernick was when he was 25 or 26 years old, at 32 years old or 31 years old. Michael Vick, for example, he was able to get back to being a starter in Philadelphia after being out of the league for 2 years. So it's not outside the realm of possibility for Colin Kaepernick. But Michael Vick, when he came back, he was never the player that he was in his prime. He had lost a bit of his speed. One of the main reasons that Colin Kaepernick was so effective in San Francisco was his ability to make plays with his legs. I'm going to assume that Colin Kaepernick actually wants back in the NFL. He might not. And I'll assume that he would be willing to make $1 or $2 million to start out and be a backup. But if he were to get back into the NFL, is there anywhere that he could go and potentially become the starter at some point throughout the season? One thing I know for sure, he's not going to be starting anywhere week 1. 4 years is too long of a layoff to step in after training camp at the preseason and be ready to be a full-time starter. But there are some teams that he could link up with where he could eventually become the starter after some time has passed. One of the first teams that came to my mind was the Los Angeles Rams. Quick, name the backup quarterback for the Rams. Yeah, I couldn't name him either. That's because the Rams don't have a fucking backup quarterback. Last year, it was Blake Bortles. He's gone. The Rams have 3 other quarterbacks besides Jared Goff on the depth chart. John Wolford, Josh Love, Bryce Perkins. In other words, if Jared Goff gets hurt or has to miss any games, the Rams are completely fucked. Another reason I thought the Rams was because Jared Goff was exposed last season. Is anyone really looking at him as a viable long-term starter? I mean, he's really a big question mark at this point. He hasn't really had a great game since the NFC Championship game in New Orleans last January. He has struggled since the Rams Super Bowl loss to the Patriots. He's slow. He's an average passer. Kaepernick has a legitimate strong arm, and at least he can move around and extend plays. Jared Goff is the equivalent to Drew Bledsoe in the pocket. He's a fucking statue. What about the Pittsburgh Steelers? Big Ben missed damn near the entire season last year, and Mike Tomlin still had the Steelers at 8-8. Think for a minute if they would have had Colin Kaepernick instead of Mason Rudolph and the grown man that calls himself Duck. 2 guys have no business wearing an NFL uniform. The Steelers could have been a playoff team if Kaepernick had been there last season. I mean, look, Big Ben is 38 years old, and he is not a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees 38. Brady and Brees barely take hits. Big Ben has taken a beating throughout his career with his playing style. Who knows if he'll be able to play a full season this year? Colin Kaepernick would damn sure be a better option in the backup spot over Mason Rudolph and duck the fuck. From a PR perspective, for the NFL, the best place for Colin Kaepernick would be the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, this is strictly public relations only. They play in Minneapolis, the city where what's going on right now in the country initially began. And the Vikings have a depth chart of bums backing up Kirk Cousins. Same situation as the Rams and the Steelers find themselves in. We saw how important last year having a serviceable backup quarterback is. New Orleans had Teddy Bridgewater. Saints went 5-0 in Drew Brees' absence. The Steelers had Mason Rudolph and duck the fuck. Missed the playoffs with one of the best defenses in the NFL. All three of those teams could be viable options if Colin Kaepernick wants to return, but whether or not he ever plays in the NFL again is anyone's guess. In my opinion, the chances are slim. But if he were to return, 2020 would be the perfect opportunity for him to do so, from a league perspective and from a PR perspective. He should have never been, for lack of a better term, kicked out of the league to begin with for expressing his opinion on a social issue. It's crazy when you think about it. Michael Vick was convicted by the feds, not state and local government, but the feds for dogfighting, running an interstate dogfighting organization. He was pretty much welcomed back to the league with open arms. I mean, there were some minor protests, but for the most part, Michael Vick was forgiven. Colin Kaepernick has never been forgiven. He was blackballed from the league for raising awareness on the issue of police brutality. Never convicted of a crime. Hell, he's never even been accused of a crime. All he did was practice his right to protest. And here we sit, 4 years later, and there are still people in America that haven't forgiven him and never will. Even if he does want to return, and there's a team out there willing to give him a chance, it's going to be a difficult journey for him. 4 years out of the league is a long time. But if he is interested in getting one last chance at the NFL, there will never be a more perfect time than right now for him to make it happen. All right, that's all for today. Click that like and subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Appreciate those of you guys that have already done so. Leave me a comment in the section below. What do you think about Colin Kaepernick? Is right now the perfect time for him to get back into the NFL? And if he does, where do you think he would have the best chance at eventually becoming a starter? Let me know your thoughts. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. If you have any questions, email them to BTLKC84@gmail.com. I will see you guys next time.